Good afternoon. I'm Valentina Alfonsi. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Laboratory of Sleep Psychophysiology in Sapienza, University of Rome. Today, I'm going to talk about our recent study on the effects of the COVID-19 on dream activity, conducted in collaboration with many universities and institutions in our country. COVID-19 critically impacted the world and clearly also our daily and sleep routine. Since the very beginning of the COVID-19 lockdown, we observed an interesting phenomenon all over the world. In particular, people spontaneously report more frequent, vivid, and emotional dreams on the websites or social media platforms. And we should also remember that the pandemic experience could be considered a traumatic event, as reflected by the higher proportion of PTSD-like symptoms during this period, in Italy and in other countries. All this is in line with the previous studies that showed changes of dreams and nightmares as a consequences of adverse events, such as, for example, wars, infectious disease, or earthquake. To date, studies directly investigated the effects of the pandemic on dream quality and quantity are very scarce. And here in the summary table, we briefly present some interesting results from recent studies, consistently showing that during lockdown, we observed an increased dream frequency, more emotional charge, and in particular, negative emotional tone in dreams, more virus-related contents, and specific predictors of such modifications, which are mainly female gender, psychological distress, and poor sleep quality. In particular, we had three main goals in this study. First of all, we aim to assess whether Italian people actually had higher dream and nightmare frequency during the pandemic by comparing with a normative sample. Then we aim to identify the specific predictors of dream and nightmare frequency during lockdown by investigating the social demographic and COVID-related aspects, but also considering psychological symptoms and sleep measures. Finally, we aim to evaluate emotional features of dreams and nightmares in different subgroups, divided according to COVID-related aspects. We hypothesized that the radical changes in daily life routine and their related aspects widely impact dream activity, especially increasing nightmare frequency and emotional contents and charge of dreams. We selected for this study only Italian adult subjects, resulting in a final sample of 5,988 subjects. Each participant completed a web-based survey. The survey was available during the Italian lockdown period, and each subject was previously informed about the nature of the study, and all personal data was anonymized. Data reported in the current study were part of a wider project, and other results were presented elsewhere. The web form was composed of 4 sections, and each section collected specific measures. The first part was about the social demographic information, for example, gender, age, education, occupation, and COVID-related information, such as COVID positivity, modification of daily and sleep habits, or having relatives or friends affected or deceased from COVID. The other sections refer to specific and well-known scales and questionnaires to assess psychological symptoms by the depression, anxiety, stress scales, sleep measures collected by the medical outcomes study sleep scale. And in particular, we considered a global sleep problem index and information about sleep duration and intra-sleep wakefulness. We also assessed dream variables by the man-named dream questionnaire. And here we focused on items regarding dream recall and nightmare frequency, dream emotional intensity, dream emotional tone, and nightmare distress. Here we can see the result about the first goal of the study. That is the comparison of dream and nightmare frequency between normative sample, here in yellow, and pandemic sample in blue. Specifically, the figure showed the distribution of scores on a Likert scale about dream recall frequency in the upper and nightmare frequency in the bottom. Statistical comparison by chi-square test show different distribution of scores in the two groups for both dream measures. In particular, bar plots describe higher scores for dream recall and nightmare frequency in pandemic sample compared to normative sample. Another relevant research question was about the predictors of high and low dream frequency. And here we can see the logistic regression model on dream recall frequency, showing that younger age, female gender, not having children, and higher sleep duration were all predictors of higher dream recall frequency. In this other figure, we can see the same regression analysis on predictors of nightmare frequency, which are in this case younger age, female gender, modification of daytime napping, higher intra-sleep wakefulness, higher sleep duration, sleep problems, and anxiety and depression symptoms. Finally, we can see from this table the emotional features, in particular emotional intensity, emotional tone, and nightmare distress in different subgroups affecting or not by COVID-related aspects. We compared all different groups by t-test. Specifically, we observed higher emotional features of dream activity in workers who have stopped their jobs, in people having relatives or friends infected or diseased from COVID, and in subjects who changed their sleep habits, in particular sleep onset, morning awakenings, and daytime napping. So the first relevant result of the current study show an increased dream recall and nightmare frequency as compared with a normative sample under normative condition. And we could explain this result considering that nightmares and dreams could represent an attempt to process stressful events by specific memory mechanisms. And consistently, many studies have demonstrated that after experiencing traumatic or stressful events, dreams underwent significant changes in their occurrence. We also identified the predictors of dream and nightmare frequency during the lockdown, confirming higher dreams and nightmares in female gender and young age, as observed in previous studies, while surprisingly, having children was negatively associated with dream recall frequency, despite having children was considered as possible stressor during this period. However, we have not any information about ages or number of children, which could explain such unexpected result. We also found that poor sleep, in particular sleep problems and intra-sleep wakefulness, predict nightmare frequency. And this is in keeping with the arousal retrieval model, which stated that dream recall may be promoted by awakenings during sleep and by the resulting sleep fragmentation. Within this theoretical framework, the predictive role of longer sleep duration for dream recall and nightmare frequency may appear contradictory. However, we should consider that sleep timing were strongly affected by the home confinement, and longer sleep duration during lockdown has been associated to lighter and more fragmented sleep. Finally, higher level of anxiety and depressive symptoms lead to more unpleasant dreams. And this is in line with the role of dreams in emotional processes and with the hypothesis of dreaming as coping strategy during stressful events and life changes. And then we found higher emotional features in terms of intensity, tone, and distress of dream activity in people most affected by the pandemic. We explain such results with the fact that negative events and emotions during lockdown could be incorporated in sleep meditation, in line with the well-known hypothesis of continuity between wake and sleep processes. We collected data from a very large Italian sample, but we also have to mention some limitation in this study. For example, we did not collect dream report, and so we cannot directly assess the continuity between waking experiences and actual dream contents. Also, the information about sleep quality is not supported by objective or systematic measures, such as, for example, actigraphic recordings or sleep diaries, and so on. Moreover, we have not any information about psychological treatment, pharmacological treatment, which may affect sleep and dreaming. Finally, we have not a real baseline in this study, which could have been informative about the pre-pandemic condition. And this aspect limits our understanding about the causal relationship between pandemic and changes in dream activity. In conclusion, our results are in line with the evidence of a strong influence of traumatic collective experiences on phenomenology of dream activity. We also confirm and extend the results of previous studies that showed an increased frequency and emotional charge of dreams and nightmares during the pandemic. And our results are also in line with the well-known continuity hypothesis and arousal retrieval model, pointing out the influence of psychological distress and sleep problems, respectively, on dream aspects. Finally, we suggest that future investigations should monitor the changes in dreams and nightmares across the pandemic, also considering the implications for clinical treatment and prevention of mental and sleep disorders. Thank you very much for your attention.